Three bathtubs, three bodies floating face down. The same scene repeated 3 times in 8 years, like someone wrote the same macabre ending for 3 different people, like there was an invisible script forcing this family to always end the same way. Whitney Houston, the most powerful voice of her generation, dead in a hotel bathtub. Her only daughter, Bobbi Kristina, 22 years old, found in the exact same position as her mother face down in a bathtub, almost on the anniversary of Whitney's death. And Nick Gordon, the man who grew up calling Whitney mom, the man who swore he would protect Bobbi until he stopped, dead too under circumstances no one ever investigated enough. All three connected by blood, by sick love, by dirty money, and by a secret so dark the Houston family spent decades trying to bury it. A secret that began when Whitney was 7 years old. A secret that followed her for 4 decades. A secret that, if you truly understand it, changes forever the way you see the life and death of one of the most extraordinary voices the world has ever heard. This is not the story of an addict who drowned in a bathtub. That's the easy version, the version that sells magazines, the version that lets everyone responsible sleep peacefully at night. This is the real story, the story of a little girl whose innocence was stolen before she even understood what that word meant, of a woman who was forbidden to love the person she truly loved, because that didn't sell records, of a mother who systematically destroyed her own daughter to fulfill her own broken dreams, of a father who sued her for $100 million while she was dying in a hospital bed, a father who had been her manager for years, who negotiated her contracts, who lived off her talent, and then at the end of her life, decided his daughter owed him money. A man who chose to take her to court instead of saying goodbye in peace. And of an industry that built a perfect idol while knowing perfectly well that inside she was falling apart piece by piece. In this video, you're going to discover what really happened in Whitney's childhood, the thing that marked her forever. You're going to learn the name of the woman who was the true love of her life, and you're going to understand exactly why they forced Whitney to walk away from her. You're going to hear why Cissy Houston, her own mother, told Oprah Winfrey on camera that she never would have accepted her daughter if she had been who she really was. And you're going to see the inconsistencies in the investigation into Whitney's death, things a private detective with 30 years of experience has spent almost a decade trying to get someone, anyone, to listen to. There is a photo from the bathroom at the Beverly Hilton that completely contradicts the official version. There is a detail in the forensic report that no expert has been able to explain convincingly. The water in that bathtub was still almost boiling 6 hours after they found her body, and there is a pattern that ties 3 deaths together in a way that feels impossible to be a coincidence. We're going to talk about all of it, but first you need to see how it all began. February 11th, 2012, Saturday, 3:27 in the afternoon, the Beverly Hilton Hotel, Los Angeles, 4th floor, Suite 308. The hallway is silent. The carpet swallows footsteps. A woman walks toward the suite door. It's Whitney Houston's personal assistant. She's been at Whitney's side for more than a decade. She's seen the best, the Grammys, the stadiums, the standing ovations that lasted minutes. And she's seen the worst. The nights Whitney couldn't get out of bed, the last-minute cancellations, the lies she had to invent to protect her from the press. She opens the door to the suite. Her feet touch something wet. She looks down. Water. The marble floor of the entryway is covered, completely by water. A huge pool spreading from the bathroom to where she's standing. The sound of running water comes from deeper inside the suite, steady like a waterfall no one bothered to turn off. She walks toward the bathroom. Every step makes a splash against the soaked carpet. The water soaks her shoes. She pushes the bathroom door open, and what she sees on the other side freezes her entire body. The jacuzzi is overflowing. Water pours over the edges without stopping. The bathroom floor is a lake, and floating face down, completely still, arms stretched out like she's flying, is Whitney Elizabeth Houston, 48 years old, 200 million records sold, 6 Grammy Awards, 22 American Music Awards, 11 consecutive #1s on Billboard, the voice that defined the 80s and the 90s, the woman who made millions cry with a single song dead, 12 hours before the Grammy Awards, where she was scheduled to appear. The assistant doesn't scream. She doesn't cry. She dials 911 with fingers that barely obey her. Her voice is strangely controlled, like somewhere deep in her mind she always knew this day was coming. "I need help at the Beverly Hilton," she says. "Suite 308. It's an emergency. Please come quickly." She hangs up and just stares at the body of the woman she gave more than a decade of her life to, floating, motionless, finally at peace. Paramedics arrive 14 minutes later. They take the stairs because the elevator is busy. They enter the suite, splash through the water, and confirm what everyone already knows before they even check for a pulse. There's nothing to do. Whitney's body is cold to the touch. She's been in that position for hours. But here's the first detail that doesn't fit. The bathtub water's still hot. Not warm. Hot, almost boiling. Keep that detail in your mind, because when you connect it to what comes next, you'll understand why people have spent years demanding this case be reopened. When LAPD detectives step into the suite to inspect the scene, they find details that raise more questions than answers. On the dining table, there's a plate of food, a cheeseburger, and fries untouched. On the nightstand, there's another plate, a sandwich nobody took a bite of. Was Whitney planning to eat twice, or was there someone else in that room? There's an open bottle of Moët champagne propped against the minibar, a half-finished Heineken on the nightstand, drug paraphernalia laid out neatly by the bathroom sink. Everything is too tidy, too convenient, like someone carefully arranged a scene that said exactly what they wanted it to say. The official autopsy report is published 6 weeks later, 42 pages. Cause of death: accidental drowning by immersion. Contributing factors: atherosclerotic heart disease and the presence of substances in the body. Manner of death: accident, case closed. Next. But on page 31 of that report, there's a paragraph almost nobody read closely, a paragraph the media ignored because it didn't fit the simple narrative they wanted to sell. The report describes ecchymosis on the upper left arm. In plain language, deep bruises. It describes superficial abrasions on the forehead, and it describes what the medical examiner literally calls areas of abnormal skin discoloration consistent with exposure to extreme heat. In words everyone understands: burns. How do you get burned in a bathtub? Why did she have bruises on her arm? And why, after 6 hours, was the water still so hot that first responders described it as almost boiling? Bath water loses heat quickly. In an hour, it should be lukewarm. In 3 hours, room temperature. In 6 hours, cold. But this water stayed hot. Either someone kept adding hot water after Whitney died, or the temperature was manipulated in a way the forensic report chose not to investigate. And there's another detail one that appeared briefly in early police reports, and then mysteriously disappeared from every official document afterward. Whitney Houston's driver's license was found outside her purse, not inside, where it would normally be. Outside on the dresser, like someone took it out for a reason and then left it there. Who took it out? Why? And why did nobody investigate that? A private investigator named Paul Hubel decided to ask the questions nobody else was asking. Hubel is a former Chicago police homicide detective with 32 years of experience. He's worked hundreds of death cases, and when he saw Whitney Houston's file, something in his investigator's instinct told him the official story didn't add up. For months, Hubel reviewed every public document available. He spoke to hotel employees who refused to give their names. He analyzed forensic photos that leaked to tabloids. He studied the timeline of that afternoon, and he reached a conclusion he presented publicly. This death has too many inconsistencies to be closed as an accident, too many loose ends, too many unanswered questions, too many details that don't fit the narrative of an accidental drowning. Hubel formally requested the case be reopened. He requested the body be exhumed for a second autopsy. He asked for the hotel security footage to be reviewed, the footage that, conveniently, was never released to the public. He asked for the people who were in contact with Whitney that day to be questioned again. Every request was denied. The Los Angeles Police Department said the case was closed and there wasn't enough evidence to reopen it. The case remains closed to this day, but the questions are still there, waiting for answers that may never come. And to understand how Whitney ended up in that bathtub, you have to go back 48 years. You have to meet the little girl who existed before the cameras ever found her. You have to understand that Whitney Houston didn't die on February 11th, 2012. The little girl who was Whitney died decades earlier. That bathtub at the Beverly Hilton was just the official death certificate for a body that had been walking around for years. August 9th, 1963. Beth Israel Hospital, Newark, New Jersey. Whitney Elizabeth Houston is born, the third child of John Russell Houston Jr. and Emily Sissy Drinkard Houston. Her father is a city administrator with connections in entertainment. Her mother is Sissy Houston, an extraordinary gospel and soul singer, a professional backing vocalist who worked with some of the biggest names in music, Elvis Presley, Aretha Franklin, Jimi Hendrix, but always a backing singer, always the voice behind somebody else. Never her name in lights, never the star. And that frustration, that unfulfilled dream eating her alive, turns into the obsession that will define her relationship with her youngest daughter. Sissy looks at Whitney and doesn't see a child. She sees a second chance. She sees a way to achieve through her daughter what she never achieved herself. Whitney is going to be the biggest star in the world. Whitney is going to have the fame Sissy deserved but never got. And the price that little girl has to pay to make that happen? It doesn't matter. Whitney starts singing in the choir of New Hope Baptist Church in Newark when she's 11. Sissy is the choir director, and she trains her daughter with an intensity that borders on cruelty. Every note has to be perfect. Every breath timed to the millisecond. Every movement on stage has to deliver the exact right emotion at the exact right moment. If Whitney makes even the smallest mistake, Sissy corrects her in front of everyone, publicly humiliates her, makes sure she knows she's not enough, that she has to be better, that perfection isn't the goal, it's the minimum. Whitney learns a lesson that will haunt her for the rest of her life. Her mother's love is conditional. She only gets affection when she sings perfectly. She only gets approval when she's on stage giving everything she has. She only exists. She's only visible. She only matters when she's a star. Off stage, she's invisible. Her needs don't matter. Her fears don't matter. Her trauma doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is that she keeps singing, keeps being perfect, keeps fulfilling Sissy's dream. And remember, while all of this is happening, the seed of the curse is already planted. The little girl who decades later will be found floating in a bathtub at the Beverly Hilton is already being broken from the inside. It's just that nobody wanted to see it. But Sissy can't always be there. She has to tour with other artists. She has contracts, shows. She needs the money. So when she leaves, often she leaves Whitney and her siblings in the care of extended family. Aunts, cousins, grandmothers, trusted people from the Houston inner circle. One of those people is an older relative, also a singer, known and respected in Newark's music scene, someone everyone trusted blindly. What happened during those years, while Sissy was away on tour, didn't become public until 2018, 25 years after Whitney became a global star, and 6 years after her death. That's when a documentary directed by Kevin McDonald, titled simply Whitney, revealed testimonies the family had kept buried for decades. Testimonies that explained everything: the pain Whitney carried, the addictions, the inability to trust, the broken relationship with her own body, everything. Gary Garland Houston, Whitney's older brother, spoke on camera. Mary Jones, Whitney's personal assistant during the final years of her life, confirmed the story with heartbreaking detail. And Pat Houston, Whitney's sister-in-law who handled her business affairs, added her testimony. All three told the same story. All three confirmed what Whitney could never say publicly while she was alive. Whitney suffered deep trauma and childhood trauma caused by someone in her own family. Someone who was supposed to care for her while Sissy was away. Someone who took advantage of that absence to do things that cannot be forgiven. Gary revealed he was also a victim of the same person during the same period. Two siblings only a few years apart, living the same horror in the same house, carrying the same secret for decades. They never told Sissy when she came home from tour. They never talked about it with each other. They carried that weight in absolute silence, while the world watched them smile on stages and magazine covers. Mary Jones, the assistant who stayed with Whitney until the end, revealed something that shows exactly how much that trauma destroyed Whitney from the inside. Whitney confessed what happened to her, and then she said something that splits your heart in half. I wonder if I did something to make them think I wanted it. A grown woman, a superstar, 200 million records sold, still blaming herself for something done to her when she was 7 years old. Still thinking somehow it was her fault. That's what trauma does. It convinces you that you deserved what happened. It destroys you from the inside while the world applauds you from the outside. It makes you carry shame that was never yours. When journalists asked Sissy Houston about those revelations after the documentary, her response was revealing for what she didn't say. Cold, evasive. She didn't defend her daughter with the rage you'd expect from a mother. She didn't express horror or regret for failing to protect her children. She simply said she couldn't believe it and changed the subject. She never publicly apologized to Whitney for not keeping her safe. She never acknowledged that her constant absence created the conditions for this to happen. And that silence says more than any words. This isn't just the origin story of a star. It's the origin story of a victim. And that changes everything when you see her floating in that bathtub. Years later, Whitney began searching for ways to shut off the pain while she was still a teenager. At 14, her older brother Michael offered her her first substances at a family gathering. She said yes and discovered something that changed her life. When she was high, the memories blurred. The pain went numb. She could pretend she was fine. She could function. She could forget, at least temporarily, what she was carrying. At 16, someone in her circle offered her something stronger, and Whitney found the companion that would follow her for the rest of her life. Not because she was weak, not because she was naturally self-destructive, but because it was the only tool she knew to survive a pain no one around her wanted to admit even existed. She said yes and discovered something that changed her life. When she was under the influence, the memories became blurry. The pain went numb. She could pretend she was okay. She could function. She could forget, even if only temporarily, what she was carrying inside. At 16, someone in her circle offered her something stronger, and Whitney found the companion that would stay with her for the rest of her life. Not because she was weak, not because she was self-destructive by nature, but because it was the only tool she knew to survive a pain that no one around her wanted to acknowledge even existed. But then at 17, Whitney met someone who changed everything. Someone who made her feel safe for the first time since childhood. Someone who looked at her and saw the real person behind the perfect voice. Someone who loved her without conditions, without demanding perfection, without requiring her to sing in order to deserve affection. Her name was Robyn Crawford. And what began that summer would become the most important and most tragic love story of Whitney Houston's life. Summer of 1980, a youth summer camp in East Orange, New Jersey. Whitney is 17, freshly turned. Robyn is 19. They're both working there as counselors. They are the only two black girls in the entire camp. They notice each other immediately. She didn't look like anyone I'd ever met in East Orange, Robyn wrote almost 40 years later in her memoir. She had something special, a light, and I knew from the first moment that I was going to protect her. What started as a friendship quickly turned into something deeper. They became inseparable. They spent every minute together. They stayed up until 4 in the morning talking about everything and nothing. They wrote each other letters whenever they were apart, even if it was only for a few days. And eventually what they felt for each other became impossible to ignore. They fell deeply in love, the kind of love that changes you forever, the kind of love that divides your life into before her and after her. When Whitney turned 18, she and Robyn made a decision that felt natural at the time. They moved in together, they rented a small apartment, they shared everything. And for the first time since her childhood trauma, Whitney felt like she could trust someone, like she could be loved exactly as she was, without performing, without singing to earn affection, without being the perfect star her mother demanded. With Robyn, Whitney could simply be Whitney, and that was enough. But a massive problem was waiting for them. Sissy Houston eventually discovered the true nature of that relationship. It's not clear exactly how. Maybe she saw them together in a way she couldn't ignore. Maybe someone in their inner circle told her. Maybe she simply knew with that instinct mothers sometimes have. And when she found out, her reaction was immediate, brutal, and relentless. Sissy confronted Whitney in private. The words she used stayed burned into Whitney's memory forever. Robyn later revealed them in her memoir. Whitney told me her mother said it wasn't natural for two women to be that close. Those were her exact words, not natural. For Sissy, a deeply religious woman raised in Southern Baptist tradition, what her daughter was doing was a sin. It was shame. It was something that had to be hidden and erased. But Sissy was smart. She knew that attacking Robyn directly would only push Whitney closer to her. So she used another strategy. She used the most powerful weapon she had, Whitney's dream of becoming a singer. In 1982, Whitney was about to sign her first record deal with Arista Records. Legendary producer Clive Davis had discovered her singing at a Manhattan club called Michael's. He was frozen when he heard her voice. "This girl is going to be the biggest artist of her generation," he told his partners that very night. He offered her a contract. Whitney was on the verge of becoming exactly what her mother had always dreamed. And then came the conversation. Clive Davis, John Houston, Whitney's father, and Sissy. The three of them sitting across from Whitney explaining how the real world worked. A black female singer in the 1980s with a relationship like the one she had with Robyn would never make it. The media would destroy her before she sold a single record. The white audience she needed to conquer wouldn't accept her. The black community would reject her for different reasons. Her career would be over before it even began. Everything her mother had sacrificed to give her this chance would be wasted. Whitney was 19 years old. She was standing at a crossroads that would define everything that came after. On one side was Robyn True Love, the only person who made her feel whole, the only person with whom she could truly be herself. On the other side was stardom, the fame her mother had dreamed of for her before she was even born, the chance to be the greatest, to prove her worth, to finally make Sissy proud. She only had to choose. She only had to sacrifice one thing to have the other. She only had to decide what mattered more, being loved for who she really was, or being adored by millions who would never know the real person behind the voice. Whitney chose fame, and this is where the curse changes shape. Now it's no longer just childhood trauma. Now it's the abuse of a mother and an industry telling her that her love is a sin. Every no she received for being who she was pushed Whitney one step closer to that bathtub at the Beverly Hilton, and she spent the rest of her life paying the price for that decision. One day that same year, Whitney gave Robyn a gift, a slate blue Bible covered in soft leather with thin pages like tissue paper. On the first page, Whitney had written something by hand. Robyn has never publicly revealed exactly what it said, but she has described the conversation that followed. "Our relationship has to change," Whitney told her. Her voice was calm, but her hands were shaking. "If people find out what we are, they'll use it against us. They'll destroy everything I've worked for. You understand that, right?" Robyn looked at her, took the Bible and nodded. Because what else could she do? The woman she loved was telling her their love was a problem, an obstacle, something that had to be hidden so the world would accept her. "We never talked about labels like lesbian or gay," Robyn wrote decades later. "We were just living our lives, and I naively hoped it could stay that way forever. But it didn't." That blue Bible marks the exact moment Whitney Houston stopped being free, the moment she agreed to live inside a lie built from other people's expectations, the moment she sacrificed her truth on the altar of fame. That day, Whitney didn't just give Robyn a Bible. Without realizing it, she signed the first page of the script that would eventually lead her to die alone in a bathtub. And that Bible still exists. Robyn keeps it to this day. It's the physical object that symbolizes everything Whitney had to lose to become what the world wanted her to be. Robyn didn't disappear from Whitney's life. She stayed on as her personal assistant, then her creative director, then co-director of Nippy Inc., Whitney's entertainment company. They worked side by side for almost 2 decades, traveled the world together, shared hotel rooms, saw each other every day, but no longer as lovers, close but separated, together but alone, trapped inside a lie neither of them could ever confess. Whitney never got over that loss. She never found with anyone else what she had with Robyn, and eventually she tried to fill that void in the worst possible way. In 2013, 1 year after Whitney's death, Oprah Winfrey interviewed Sissy Houston to promote her memoir. And during that interview, Oprah asked the question everyone wanted answered. "Would it have bothered you if your daughter had been gay?" Yes. Sissy didn't hesitate. Absolutely. Oprah, visibly shocked, us pressed further. You wouldn't have accepted it. Not at all, Sissy repeated, staring straight into the camera. Bobby Brown, the man the world blamed for years for destroying Whitney, said something revealing after watching that interview. I truly feel that if Robyn had been accepted in Whitney's life, she would still be alive today. The supposed villain of this story understood something Whitney's own mother refused to see, that substances were never the real problem. The real problem was forcing Whitney to be someone she wasn't. The real problem was stealing her right to love freely. 1989. 10 years after meeting Robyn, Whitney is on top of the world. Her debut album sells 25 million copies. Her second album debuts at #1. 7 singles go #1 consecutively, an untouchable record. She is the most successful female artist on the planet. She sells out stadiums in minutes. Her videos dominate MTV. Her face is everywhere. Brands chase her for endorsements. She is exactly what Sissy dreamed. But there's a problem no one wants to see. Whitney is empty inside. She has everything the world defines as success and none of what she actually needs. Every night she walks on stage pretending to be someone she isn't. Every interview is a carefully rehearsed lie. Every perfect photo hides a pain she can't share with anyone. And then, at the Soul Train Awards, something happens that scars her forever. When Whitney walks on stage to accept her award, the audience does the unthinkable. They boo her. At her own ceremony, her own community is publicly rejecting her. They say her music is too white, that she sold out, that she forgot her roots, that she's a traitor. Whitney leaves the stage in tears. That rejection breaks something in her she never fully recovers from. And that same night, at that same ceremony, she meets Bobby Brown, an R&B singer, a bad boy, someone with unquestioned credibility in the Black community. Exactly what she needs to silence the criticism. Exactly what she needs to bury the rumors about Robyn once and for all. Bobby Brown isn't just troubled. He's chaos wrapped in charisma. A former member of New Edition, a successful solo artist with the mega hit My Prerogative, and a documented history of arrests, multiple children with different women, substance issues, and a reputation as a womanizer. Whitney looks at him and sees the perfect solution to her image problem. Bobby looks at her and sees fame, money, and a way to stay relevant as his own career declines. They use each other from the beginning and call it love. They marry on July 18, 1992. The wedding is held at Whitney's mansion in Mendham, New Jersey, 800 guests. A wedding dress worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. A 25-piece orchestra, perfect for the cameras. But witnesses say Whitney wasn't in condition to be there, that Bobby was drunk, that Sissy cried throughout the ceremony, not tears of joy, and that Robyn Crawford, the maid of honor, wore the expression of someone attending a funeral. What followed were 14 years of documented chaos, public fights, canceled concerts, appearances where Whitney was visibly unwell, and a spiral of self-destruction the entire world watched helplessly. In a 2009 interview with Oprah, 3 years before her death, Whitney described her marriage without filters. Emotionally, he abused me, she said, the words coming slowly, like each one cost her a piece of her soul. She admitted Bobby had been physically violent, then added, "But I hit him back 3 times harder," trying to make it sound like a joke. No one laughed. Then she told another story, one that explained everything. It was Bobby's birthday. Whitney threw him a surprise party, invited all his friends, hired entertainment, did everything to make him happy. Bobby drank too much that night, and when they got home, all that joy turned dark. "He humiliated me in a way I'll never forget," Whitney said. She paused for a long time, then added the most devastating part. "And my daughter was coming down the stairs. She saw everything." Bobbi Kristina saw it. She was 12 years old, watching her father brutally humiliate her mother, an image that burned into her mind forever and would eventually contribute to her own destruction. On March 4, 1993, Bobbi Kristina Brown is born, the only child of Whitney Houston and Bobby Brown. From the moment she arrives, her fate seems sealed. She grows up in a house where chaos is normal, where fights are constant background noise. where her parents disappear for hours into locked rooms doing things she doesn't understand, but knows are wrong. She grows up with cameras following her from the age of 2. She learns that love means screaming, tears, and fake reconciliations, that love hurts, that love destroys, and she will repeat that pattern exactly until it kills her. In 2005, Bobby Brown has what he thinks is a brilliant idea, a reality show. The trend is at its peak. The Osbournes was a hit. Newlyweds broke records. Why not them? They convinced Bravo, and being Bobby Brown is born. 11 episodes of unfiltered dysfunction. Whitney appears visibly unwell in multiple scenes. Bobby behaves erratically and inappropriately. They fight on camera, say things that should never be public. And in the background of every scene, always there, always ignored, is Bobbi Kristina. 12 years old, trying to be a normal child while her parents self-destruct on national television. The show lasts 1 season. Whitney refuses to do a second. She blocks a DVD release. But the damage is done. Millions have seen the reality behind the fantasy, and Bobbi Kristina lived every second of it, knowing the entire world was watching. That reality show didn't just destroy Whitney's image. It shaped Bobbi Kristina's destiny to repeat the same ending. Substances, pain, and a bathtub. After that, Bobby begins to unravel. Trouble at school, erratic behavior, fights, and at 15, her first hospitalization for substance use. She arrives at the ER in critical condition. Doctors work to stabilize her. And when Whitney arrives at the hospital, instead of facing reality, she tells anyone who will listen. "My daughter doesn't have a problem. This was just an isolated accident." But it wasn't isolated, and it wasn't an accident, and everyone knew it except the person who was supposed to protect her. In 2007, Whitney finally divorces Bobby. She gets full custody of Bobbi Kristina. In theory, removing Bobby from the toxic environment should help, but Whitney is still spiraling, still using, still canceling shows, still making tabloids for all the wrong reasons. And Bobby, surrounded by too much money and too much freedom, begins following her mother's footsteps exactly. By 16, photos circulate of her at parties, using substances, with the same empty look Whitney had at that age. The pattern is repeating, and no one stops it. And then Nick Gordon enters the story, the character who turns this family tragedy even darker. Nick Gordon moves in with Whitney and Bobby when he's 12 years old. His biological mother is dealing with severe problems and can't care for him. Whitney takes him in, gives him a home, treats him like a son. She never legally formalizes the adoption, but everyone in their circle considers him part of the family. Bobbi Kristina calls him her older brother. That's exactly what they are. Family, siblings. Whitney raised him as her child. Fate had other plans, turning him into the final link in the curse. Until suddenly, they aren't siblings anymore. After Whitney's death in February 2012, something changes between Bobby and Nick. He comforts her through the grief. He stays with her on the nights she can't sleep. He's the only person who truly understands what she's feeling, because he lost Whitney too. And at some point, that closeness turns into something else. In October 2012, 8 months after Whitney's death, Bobby and Nick post official photos announcing they're together. They wear rings. They call each other husband and wife, and the Houston family and the Brown family explode at the same time. Sissy Houston gives an interview calling their relationship incestuous. Pat Houston tries to intervene and separate them. Bobby Brown directly threatens Nick, but Bobby listens to no one. In her mind distorted by grief, inherited trauma, and substances, Nick is the only stable thing she has. The only person who was there during the worst moments. She doesn't see that she's repeating her mother's pattern exactly, searching for love in the most destructive place possible. The curse is about to claim its second victim, and the scene will be almost identical. January 31st, 2015, 3 years after Whitney's death. Almost exactly on the anniversary, a house in Roswell, Georgia, where Bobby and Nick live. Nick leaves in the morning to run errands, says he'll be back in an hour. 45 minutes later, a friend in the house hears something strange upstairs. He goes up. The door to the main bathroom is closed. Water is leaking out from underneath. He pushes the door open and finds Bobbi Kristina floating face down in the bathtub, unconscious, not breathing in, a scene almost identical to her mother's 3 years earlier. The 911 call is devastating. "My friend isn't breathing," the man says, his voice breaking. "Please come quickly. It's Bobbi Kristina Brown, Whitney Houston's daughter." Paramedics manage to revive her temporarily. Her heart starts beating again. For a moment, there's hope. She's rushed to Emory University Hospital in Atlanta. But the tests reveal what no one wants to hear. Bobby's brain was without oxygen for too long. The damage is massive, irreversible. There's no recovery. She's placed in a medically induced coma. And what follows are 6 months of agony. 6 months where machines keep her body alive, while outside the hospital, the Houston and Brown families wage war over who has the right to make decisions for her. They fight over medical custody, over hospital access, over Whitney's trust fund, now stuck in legal limbo. They even fight during Whitney Houston's funeral. Old tensions erupt into open warfare while Bobby lies unconscious, unaware of any of it. Bobby Brown refuses to unplug her. He can't. He already lost Whitney. He can't lose his only child too. But the doctors are clear. There is no hope. The brain is dead. The machines are the only thing keeping her body alive. Eventually, in June 2015, the family agrees to move her to hospice care. And on July 26, 2015, Bobbi Kristina Brown dies. 22 years old, an entire life ahead of her that she never got to live. She died exactly like her mother, in a bathtub, with substances in her system, unable to escape a destiny that seemed written from birth. The autopsy reveals multiple substances in her body and a cause of death that raises more questions than answers. Immersion in water complicated by intoxication. And most importantly, the manner of death is ruled undetermined. The medical examiners cannot say it was an accident. They cannot say it was something else. There are too many inconsistencies, too many unanswered questions. Before Bobby died, her legal representative filed a lawsuit against Nick Gordon. He was accused of physical abuse, assault, stealing money while she was in a coma, and being directly responsible for what happened that morning in the bathtub. Nick never showed up to defend himself, never responded to the accusations. And in September 2016, a judge ruled Nick Gordon legally responsible for the death of Bobbi Kristina Brown due to his failure to appear in court. He was ordered to pay $36 million to the family. Nick never paid a single cent because Nick Gordon only lived 3 more years. January 1st, 2020, Florida. Nick is 30 years old. He's celebrating New Year's with friends. Around 5 in the morning, he collapses. Paramedics can't save him. He dies on the way to the hospital. The autopsy confirms a massive overdose. Accidental death. 3 people. Whitney Elizabeth Houston, Bobbi Kristina Brown, Nicholas Gordon. All connected by love, by trauma, by money, by secrets. All dead before 50. All found in circumstances that raise more questions than answers. All victims of a cycle of destruction no one managed to break. Bobby Brown has a theory about all of this. He shared it publicly in 2021. He believes Nick Gordon was more than just a troubled boyfriend. He believes Nick was involved in ways that were never fully investigated. And now Nick is dead too, Bobby said, looking into the camera. How convenient that he can't answer any questions. It's a theory without concrete proof. But it reflects something important. There are so many unanswered questions in this story that people feel compelled to fill the gaps themselves. When authorities close cases too quickly, when investigations are superficial, when obvious inconsistencies go unexplained, theories grow in that silence. The truth about Whitney Houston doesn't require elaborate conspiracies. The truth is documented across decades of interviews, testimonies, police reports, and confessions from people close to her. Whitney Houston was never free. She was traumatized as a child by someone from her own family. She was forced to hide the only true love she ever knew. She was controlled by a mother who used her talent to fulfill her own broken ambitions. She was betrayed by a father who sued her for money while she was dying. She was trapped for 14 years in a marriage that destroyed her publicly. And she found in substances the only way to survive a pain that absolutely no one around her wanted to acknowledge. Whitney did not die in that bathtub on February 11, 2012. She died decades earlier. She died the day she accepted that blue Bible and gave up Robyn. She died the day she married Bobby Brown to silence rumors. She died every time she walked onto a stage pretending to be someone she wasn't, to please her mother, her record label, and a public that adored her, but never truly knew her. That bathtub at the Beverly Hilton was just the final punctuation mark on a sentence that started being written when she was 7 years old. And Bobbi Kristina never had a chance. She was born into the center of the storm. She grew up watching destruction and learning to call it love. She inherited not only a trust fund, but her mother's trauma, her addiction, her inability to escape toxic patterns. Bobbi didn't choose to end up in that bathtub. She was pushed toward it by decades of decisions made by other people, by a completely broken family system, by an industry that celebrated Whitney's voice while ignoring her cries for help. Today, Whitney Houston's music still generates millions of dollars every year. I Will Always Love You is one of the best-selling singles in history. Her voice is still considered one of the greatest of all time. But that money never reached Bobbi Kristina. When Bobbi died, it went directly to Cissy Houston and Whitney's siblings. Cissy Houston passed away in October 2024 at 91 years old. She died without ever publicly acknowledging the damage she caused, without ever accepting who her daughter truly was, without ever saying, "I'm sorry." Bobby Brown is still alive. He remarried. He has more children. He says he overcame his problems. He wrote an autobiography trying to rewrite the narrative, but he has never fully taken responsibility for his role in Whitney's destruction. And Robyn Crawford finally spoke. In 2019, 39 years after meeting Whitney, she published her memoir. She confirmed everything: the love, the relationship, the blue Bible, the moment it all ended. "We never talked about labels," she wrote. "We were just living our lives, and I hoped it could stay that way forever." Robyn now lives in New Jersey with her wife and children. She found the peace Whitney never could, and she still keeps that slate blue Bible, the object that represents everything Whitney had to sacrifice to become what the world demanded she be. 3 bathtubs, 3 bodies, 3 lives that ended almost the same way because they were all trapped in the same cycle. A cycle of inherited trauma passed down through generations, of forbidden love turned into shame, of lies that start small and end as prisons you can't escape, of pain so deep, so constant, so silenced that the only way to survive is to numb yourself. And when you numb yourself long enough, eventually you stop waking up. Whitney Houston didn't choose her destiny. From the moment someone in her own family destroyed her innocence at 7 years old, her path was marked. Every decision she made afterward was an attempt to survive that original trauma. Every lie was self-protection. Every substance was an attempt to forget. And everyone around her, from her mother to her husband to the entire industry, benefited from her talent without ever stopping to ask if she was okay. Whitney Houston had everything the world defines as success: fame, money, recognition, a voice that made millions cry. But she never had the one thing that truly matters: the freedom to be who she really was. And that destroyed her long before her body stopped breathing. If this story affected you, share it, like it, and subscribe. Because next week we're talking about another family where secrets destroyed children from the inside. A family with even more fame, more money, and more tragedy than the Houstons. We're talking about the Jacksons. Not the king of pop, but the child Michael. What really happened inside that house in Gary, Indiana? A father with a belt in one hand and a contract in the other. A stolen childhood that explains everything that came after. Have you ever wondered why Michael Jackson wanted to stay a child forever? Why he built Neverland? Why he struggled to connect with adults in a normal way? The answer is in that small house in Gary, Indiana. In the screams at night. In a father who used fear as a training tool. And once you know that story, you'll never hear his music the same way again.